Greetings and welcome to Prison News. Hey, we've got some information now, some prison snippets. Unfortunately, there were some stabbings out of a Pennsylvania prison. The state prison in Pennsylvania has been locked down after inmates were stabbed in a series of fights. The Department of Corrections says the state correctional institution in Somerset has been locked down since Sunday. Now, they say here the Department of Corrections says, what does the warden say? What I want to know. And number two, I want to know what were the staffing levels, how many staff were on duty. What the warden's having people do is speaking for him here. Officials say improvised weapons, can you think shanks, were used in some of the stabbings that grew out of a series of fights. Now the inmates' names haven't been released and officials haven't announced even if anybody's going to be charged in these stabbings. The inmates have been treated by prison medical staff. Well, yeah, now the staff is going to go ahead and search for weapons and contraband. Also, they suspended visitation and other programs. Now, the key word here is other programs. When you look deep into these things, you find out that staffing levels quite often are not 100% staffing levels. And they're not 95% staffing levels. And they're not 90%. But these, quote, other programs sometimes kind of cannibalize security. Now, the medium security prison is for about 1,600 male inmates, and it's about 70 miles east of Pittsburgh. Next, Justice Department implores the FCC to combat the prison cell phone problem. That's funny. I thought the prison cell phone problem was something that the warden and the guards and the lieutenants and the sergeants did. I thought they did things like searches, things like maintaining security, things like, well, you know, just things that prison guards do in a well-run, orderly prison. However, apparently this warden has also lost control, and they're begging the U.S. Justice Department to press federal regulators to use these special jammers, these beams that go out and jam things. Attorney General Beth Williams wrote to the Federal Communications Commission that addressing the security threat posed by contraband cell phones should be a chief priority. In other words, the guards can't, if the guards are bringing these things in, and I've got a lot of articles about them smuggling and contraband, why do you want the Justice Department to put more of a load on the back of the taxpayers, some might ask. Now, Williams says the smuggled cell phones enable inmates to continue criminal efforts outside prisons. Answer, start doing cell searches and firing staff that bring them in. Next up, here's a man who's trading his mugshot for a headshot. Now, the internet is buzzing. It says that this guy named Makili Alante Lucky, he's a felon who just signed with the modeling agency, St. Clair Modeling. Now, Lucky, he's a 20-year-old man. He claims to be from North Carolina, but this guy looks like a Somali right from that movie from Central Casting. Remember when Captain Phillips tried to keep that big ship from being taken over by Somali pirates? They made a movie about it. He looks just like that guy. Now, he's a real tough guy. He's been arrested 5 times. He runs away, steals cars. And, of course, he assaulted and apparently beat up a woman. Yeah, that's always a tough one. And he was doing alleged breakings and enterings and resisting. Oh, when he resisted arrest with an officer, it didn't go so good for young Lucky. Now he's got 2 misdemeanor violations of his parole. Now, can you believe this? This guy's on parole and he's doing this stuff, and all he gets is a misdemeanor violation. However, don't feel too bad for Lucky because his recent mugshot went viral and landed him a modeling contract. He also received a new nickname in prison called, quote, Prison Bay, unquote, spelled B-A-E. Well, prison inmate stabbing death investigated as homicide. Huh, you think? Now this is one. The death of an inmate who was stabbed Tuesday at California State Prison, Sacramento. Who would that be now, folks? Here's a little quiz. Sacramento, how about Folsom Prison? Does that ring a bell? Yep, Folsom Prison is being investigated as a homicide. Now, inmates Ovaldo Lugones, 26, and Jose Chavez, 27, were seen stabbing Anthony Olivia, 22, in the prison exercise yard, according to, no, not the warden, according to the captain, no, the lieutenant, no, just California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation News Service. The warden's not answering questions as to what were the staffing levels, how many staff were on duty when the stabbing took place. Now, get this. When this guy's being stabbed by 2 inmates, prison staff members sounded the alarm and ordered all the inmates to get on the ground. Well, you imagine what happened. They stabbed him. The guy's dead now. Hospital pronounced dead at 3:21. Come on, Warden, get out and face the cameras and tell us about those staffing levels and about your new when you got that job out there, how you were going to train staff and all the cameras were going to be fixed, and there was going to be you were going to have a zero tolerance for staff smuggling and contraband. Start doing sweeps, start doing searches, start doing getting all this stuff, these shanks out of the prison. Guess it's not working so good. Next up, Indiana State Prison case manager. Now, this woman's a case manager arrested for sexual misconduct. Now, the picture here, she's a white woman. She looks terrible. She's got a man's haircut. She looks like that cartoonish Archie, the comic books with that kind of nose. And apparently her left ear is higher than her right ear, sometimes called a forceps baby, when like the forceps go on not so good during a breech birth. Turned down mouth, and one eye just doesn't look right with this lady. And anyway, let's see. She's in an orange jumpsuit. Yes, she is. Her name's Heather Fox. Now, the soft words is an Indiana State Prison staff member has been arrested for sexual misconduct. But when you dig a little deeper, it's not just a staff member. Heather Fox was a case manager. She had tremendous influence and control over these inmates when she worked her meanness on them and did the things that she wasn't supposed to do. Now, following an interview and a written statement, Fox was suspended pending termination and placed under arrest for sexual misconduct. That's a level 5 felony. She was transported to the LaPorte County Jail. Now, the offender, he got what he wanted. He was allegedly, of course, involved. He got to be transferred out to another facility within the Indiana Department of Corrections. Now, right here, we've got something unusual. We've got a warden that stands tall instead of hiding behind his staff and hiding behind spokespeople and worried about his political future. He stands up, and I admire the guy. His name is Ron Neal. Ron, the Indiana Department of Corrections says, is committed to zero tolerance. He's talked about the offender was allegedly involved, the sexual activity he's not going to put up with. Now, Warden Ron Neal says any kind of sexual activity by volunteers, contractual staff, there's that funny name again, contractual staff. What are they doing in there, and who's funding these people? Visitors, official visitors, and offenders with offenders, regardless of whether consensual or not, is strictly prohibited. So my hat's off to Warden Ron Neal for taking some friggin' authority here and taking some responsibility and facing the cameras. Next up, Polly Toynbee, her tough on crime, she says, creates the prison's crisis. Now, I don't agree with Polly Toynbee. She writes very well. Some of the stuff I agree with. She's out of England, and she does some research, and she's in England and Wales and all those, just a cesspool. Their prisons over there are really bad. She even admits it. Let's see what Polly has to say. She says that a good test of a state's development isn't to visit fancy, glitzy, Gucci and Versace heavy shopping malls, but rather to look at the underbelly of a nation. You look at the black holes of squalor and injustice and filth called prisons. She says it's there we see that civilization has a very thin veneer. Increasingly, Britain fails that test in a country whose social fabric is in decline. Boy, that's putting it mildly. It's not just declined. It's been given a you-know-what job in England. Anyway, she says it's nowhere more shameful than its jails. Now, so far, we're in agreement. She talks about these terrible, terrible news things that were leaked out, and this place called the Howard League. Now, in theory, this Howard League monitors prison conditions, and it says staff shortages. Have you heard me talk about staff shortages before, folks? It doesn't exist. Resources that were originally made to have fully funded staffs typically are diverted to programs and sending the elite administrators to workshops, sending the elite administrators to a conference or a convention center, having a breakout group, and then coming back, all that money spent, and 4 or 5 of the towers don't have guards in them, and 3 or 4 of the security perimeter staff are missing, and I mean, the figures don't lie. Anyway, back to the Howard League here. They found out that some of these prisoners are locked up for 23 or even 24 hours at a time, laying on bunks in tiny shared cells. That's what happens when you pack people in like rats. Now, she says that crime has ticked up in the last 3 years. And another thing here says it's doubled. Man, if it's doubled in 3 years, that's more than an uptick. in crime. And she compares this with the United States and China, and she says that the swelling of the prison population in her country of England is more per head than in China. Now, that may be true. And so these things are called prison work speeches, where these guys give fire and brimstone speeches about the inmates are doing this, the inmates are doing that, we've got to have some hardened sentencing, and called a 3 strikes and you're out rule. Hey, have you heard about 3 strikes and you're out rule in this country? Yeah, funny how England and the United States and many of the globalists kind of pattern a lot of their prisoner stuff on a global agenda or a global blueprint. Next up, now here's a sad one. Palestinian clown accused by Israel of membership in a banned group. Okay, the guy's a member of a banned group. Is held without charge for 20 months, nearly 2 years. Now, on Thursday, 26-year-old Mohammed Abu Sakah told AFP he was released the day before from administrative detention. Now, this controversial measure lets Israel detain suspects without a trial. How's that sound? You tell me who the religion of peace is in this one here. The procedure allows Israel to keep suspects in prison for very long stretches of time without needing to begin a legal procedure or even informing that person what they're being held for. You just put them behind bars, you feed them a substandard ration, you deprive them of sunlight. 20 months later, there's some political winds are kind of moving, let's release them. Well, I don't want to read this too much anymore because I've got nothing against Israel, but their prison system is very, very poor. Their political system is bad. Now, this next one, folks, is very sad. If you have children in the room, I suggest you get rid of them. There's probably one of the most disgusting individuals we've seen. White, misshapen head, eyes are almost crossed, just dead, low brow, long, scraggly hair. It says, this is the Post-Tribune, out of Chicago. I mean, where else is this going to take place but Chicago? Hold on to your hats, folk. Remember what the Bible says about the end times. People become murderers, people become seducers, sedition, and then they actually become bestiality, where they have immoral relationships with animals. Well, here we are. Hobart man with history of sex abuse of animals seeks, quote, chemical castration instead of prison time. And again, this is some of this is from the Post-Tribune out of Chicago. A Hobart man has a history of sexually abusing animals. He's asked the federal court to consider instead just impose a chemical castration on him as a condition of his release. Now, Michael Bessangio, spelled Bessingano, if you want to check him out, 46-year-old, 6 years old. He's been a federal inmate at the Lake County Jail since he was arrested in January for allegedly violating his probation. So what do you think this guy was doing, violating his probation? Well, I got to read this, I guess. They want to take the time he served and take this drug called dipoluprin, and this thing, and apparently, I don't know what it does. One of the side effects of this drug, it reduces the testosterone levels, makes him like into a nub, I guess they call it. Now, they want Bessangio to be credited with the time he's already served, and then his attorney, Jennifer Sobel, Attorney Jennifer says that his conduct is motivated by sexual desires, not a desire to hurt animals. However, he has accidentally injured and killed animals during the course of his sexual exploits. You hear this? He's injured and killed animals during his sexual exploits, but Attorney Jenny Sobel says he's just, he doesn't desire to hurt the animal. How do you kill an animal? Anyway, he says the harms towards leather wearers, whatever that's supposed to mean. I guess you have a leather belt or something. Now, his attorney argued that concrete solutions to resolving his aberrant behavior is through these special treatments of this drug. She says Mr. Bessangio poses no risk or harm whatsoever to human members of his community. You want to bet? Kids find things out real quick. 6 years old, 7, 10, 12, they hear their parents talk, they get together. Now, here's another one. Fred Berlin, this guy came out of the woodwork. He's an associate professor at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine.